That's the plan. We have to open the road to the city in order to protect the city. Toda rabah, Tamar. Let's share screen. I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Ami Braun. Hold on 1 second. Let me just pin this on my face. You can't see what I'm doing, but for me, it does make a big deal. And now, my name is Ami Braun, born in the United States, made Aliyah as a kid, living in Israel my entire life. I'm a licensed tour guide and have been involved in guiding and informal education for the last over 20 years and live in Yerushalayim. And we're going to get started. Protecting Yerushalayim, opening the road to Yerushalayim. What, where, and when are we going to be going today on our virtual tour? So the where is over here. It's along the number one highway as we know it today. Okay, the sites that we're going to be visiting are we're going to be starting at Sha'ar Hagai over here. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be visiting the Castel National Park over here, right outside of Yerushalayim, and then we're staying on this same route, the number one highway that connects Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. We're going to go to Latrun, and we're going to go to the Burma Road that bypasses it that I didn't really point out over here in the map, but here I'm pointing to you where it is. That's the where. Now the when. When are we talking about? We're talking about critical months. We're talking about the months of the Independence War from November, December of 1947 until into June of 1948. And what happens is during this time is we have the Independence War in Israel that's going to be taking place. But in order to understand the Independence War, Milchemet HaAtzmaut, in Israel, we need to split the war into two sections. What do I mean? The first section is a civil war, and the second section is an all-out war. How does this happen? And once I give this as a background, it's important for me to do this to put the battles that we're about to talk about into context. All right, so just bear with me a little bit, please. On November the 29th, 1947, the United Nations votes to partition the land over here into two sections. We're going to have this brownish color that's going to be supposed to be an Arab state, and then we're going to have the bluish color over here that's supposed to be the blue that's supposed to be the Jewish state. Now the partition, the vote will pass, but the Arab countries around the land of Israel, around the land of Israel, are not going to accept it. And what will happen is at this point a civil war breaks out. Why just a civil war and not an all-out war? Because the British are still over here. The British are going to remain over here with their mandate until May of 1948. So at that point, a combination of some of the local Arabs, along with what's called Arab irregulars, who are going to come from outside of the land of Israel. I'm not calling it the state of Israel yet, because there is no state yet. But they're going to come in and they're going to start attacking the roads, Jewish towns, and roads where we have Jews traveling from one place to another. And that's what's going to happen for the next few months until the British will leave and Israel will declare independence on May the 14th, 1948. At that point, there's going to be an all-out attack by the 5 Arab countries that are surrounding Israel, at that point surrounding the state of Israel. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later on when we talk about Latun and the Burma Road, when Israel needs to fight against the Jordanians. But at this point right now, we're in the first half, okay, of the Independence War, the Civil War, and this is going to lead us to the first of the 4 areas and spots that we're going to be talking about today regarding the Independence War, and that is Sha'ar Hagai, or in Arabic, Bab el Wad, the entrance to the valley. And the picture and the topography really says it all. If we jump now into January of 1948, and we're driving on what's today the number one highway that's sitting from Tel Aviv, that's in the bottom of our screen, it's not even on the screen. We're going to be driving through a flat area until we get to over here. When we hit over here, it's called Sha'ar Hagai, the entrance to the valley, because the topography will turn into a deep valley. If you've driven on this road before, if you're Israeli, if you live in Israel, of course you've driven on it. And if you visited from abroad, you've most probably traveled on it. You'll realize that the topography, you end up in a valley over here, and you're driving surrounded by hills, twisting and turning your whole way up to the top of the mountain ridge over here, Harei Yehuda, the Judean Hills, when we arrive at Yerushalayim, when we arrive into Jerusalem. In April of 1948, we're going to have a variety of Arab towns sitting on the hilltops over here and bring in a Bedouin Muslim, a man whose name is Harun el-Jazi. Harun el-Jazi has a plan. and his plan is to choke this road on the way to Jerusalem and to make sure that the residents of Yerushalayim that are at the end of this road on top over here are unable to get food or ammunition. Inside Jerusalem at the time, there are 100,000 Jews that are living over there. That is a sixth of the entire population of the entire Jewish population in the land of Israel. Harun el Jazi is going to walk on these hills over here, and what he's going to do is he's going to walk through every little alley over there, find every little stone, every nook, every cranny where he can find, where he knows that the Arab masses can lie down in ambush and then do what's called a faza, meaning a blitz. They'll rush down onto the road over here. What he's also going to do is he's going to put a little transmitter next to Kibbutz Hulda, that's on the road, on the way to Sha'ar Hagai, to the road to Jerusalem, where the Jewish convoys will pass with vehicles on their way to Jerusalem. And it'll have, it looks like an innocent Arab walking around over there who will see these convoys pass. He's going to come to the radio transmitter and he will send a transmission to another radio transmitter that's in over here. And these hills over here, Harun ben Jazi is going to be waiting, and he'll then know that the convoys are on the way. You need to realize that this area over here, from Sha'ar Hagai to Yerushalayim, is the grand total of 16 miles, 30 kilometers. That is all. And this is the road that needs to be open because it's going to be blocked. Yerushalayim is dependent on this road, and I want you to come meet me over here at Sha'ar Hagai by the vehicles that are virtually behind my head right now and that are on the side of the road over here that we see when we drive up, that tell the story that we're about to say.
Welcome to Ami Israel Guide. You know the vehicles that you see on the side of the #1 highway when we're on our way to Jerusalem? So we went a little off-road, and here we are right now, right next to them. I can almost hear with my ears the sounds of the young men and women that were inside these vehicles fighting their way up to Jerusalem. Now from the sides of the hills there was a faza by the Arab irregulars who are making their way down, and more often than not these vehicles got stuck, and unfortunately a lot of the men and women inside were killed. And here we are paying our respects to them.
I have to tell you on a personal level that for years I was driving on the highways next to these roads, next to these vehicles over here and guiding them. It was only now during COVID that I actually came up to the vehicles and I had to find my way to get to them, which once I figured out it's all right, but it took a bit of a navigating in order to get to them and stand next to them.
Well,
and we're going to go back now to when these vehicles were trying to break their way through the road and get to Yerushalayim. Just to understand the topographical advantage that the Arabs on the hilltops over here had, take a look at the picture on the bottom right corner. All right, when you want to attack whoever's coming through the valley on the road on the bottom, this picture is worth 1,000 roads. You can see how easy it is for whoever's attacking from above and how dangerous and precarious it is for the convoys with the Jews inside trying to make their way through, the fighters trying to make their way through, and how difficult it is. Now, don't think multi-lane #1 highway that we have today, okay? It's not what was back in the winter 1947-48. Take a look at the picture on the left side of the screen over here, a narrow road. And what will happen is we're gonna have convoys of dozens of vehicles. And these vehicles that we see on the side of the road today and that we can see in the top, in the picture in the top right corner over there, these vehicles are gonna roll their way towards Sha'ar Hagai. When they reach to there, these convoys are going to be going at a pace of about 8 miles, 15 kilometers an hour. Now, the sides of the vehicles are going to be two like metal walls with the wooden wall running through the middle of it, a metal mesh on top that's supposed to protect from hand grenades that's going to be thrown at them. And when these vehicles will head out from the area of Tel Aviv or Hulda, wherever they set out from, Reuven Tamir, who's one of the young men, 17, 18, 19 years old, in these vehicles over here, coming with food to bring to starving Jerusalem, they were nervous. They knew towards what they were coming. So in order to try and help their nerves, they would sing. And Reuven, Tamir will describe, we would sing and we would sing and we would sing until we got to Sha'ar Hagai. And then we would stop. And there was a deathly silence and the bullets would start to ring out. And these vehicles, which always had a blockbuster in the front, would come up along this road to as these we can see sort of like these roadblocks that were put over here by the Arabs to stop them from making their way through. So the blockbusters would push these roadblocks to the side, and the Arabs then started to mine these roadblocks over here, and the blockbusters started getting stuck as a result of that. And imagine what's going to happen when you're in a convoy of dozens of vehicles on a very narrow road. The first vehicle gets stuck, the second one, the third one, and then you're trapped and you have nowhere to go. Moshe Rashkes is going to describe his feelings in this book over here, O Jerusalem, that's written by Larry Collins and Dominique Lapierre, an excellent book that describes these battles and in general the battles in and around Jerusalem, the Independence War. And Moshe Rashkes is going to describe his feelings inside of the vehicle as he's going to arrive on March the 31st and a huge convoy that's called the Hulda Convoy. And he says like this: it became sufficiently hot inside the cars. The clang of bullets striking Rashkes' vehicle rose into a steady din. Through a narrow gun slit, Rashkes strained for a glimpse of his attackers, but all he could see were the huge rocks and the dense pine forest rising above the road. That's exactly what we see in the picture over here. Ahead of him, Rashkes saw the blockbuster that we just spoke about, tossed into the gully by the force of the mine. A second truck, moving up behind it, had hit another mine, spun at right angles to the axis of the road. It barred the way up to Jerusalem. They're stuck. They're trapped. He'll continue and write the hell that he's going through. From all along the column, he heard the dull thump of exploding tires. As the morning sky lightened, he could see white plumes of steam spurting out of half a dozen trucks whose radiators had already been hit. It's in this convoy that Moshe Rashkes is describing on March the 31st that for the first time, none of the vehicles were able to make their way through. During the months of January through March, you come with large convoys of vehicles. Some made their way through, some didn't. This was for the first time that no one made their way through. And on March 31st, 1948, the road to Jerusalem is blocked, and Jerusalem is officially, completely, and totally under siege. And this will lead us, before I continue along, a couple quotes. First of all, let's read the quote of Benny Maharshak. Benny Maharshak was a member of the Palmach. The Palmach is a lightning strike force unit, and Benny Maharshak was like their cultural attaché. And in order to describe the importance of the road leading up to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, he'll write, "Show me a people, show me a state, whose width of their state is the width of a road." At the end of the independence, Chaim Guli, very famous poet and also fighter in the Palmach, although he didn't fight on this road over here, he fought in other areas. He's going to write the very famous song, Bab El Wad. Bab El Wad is Sharagai, the door, the gate to the valley in Arabic. And this is just the chorus over here. Bab El Wad, do remember our names forever. Convoys broke through on the way to the city. Our dead lay on the road edges. The iron skeleton is silent like my comrade. The iron skeleton are these vehicles over here on the side of the road. He's going to write the song at the end of the Independence War, already realizing that these vehicles are here to stay. On a personal story, several years ago, I guided a family, multi-generation family, grandparents, parents, and grandchildren. They arrived at the airport, and we get in the bus. We come up to Jerusalem, and for all of them was the first time, besides the grandmother, who had been here once before in 1952. It's pretty cool. And we're driving up the highway, and as we're making our way up, we see these vehicles on the side of the road. And, I start talking about it. Tour guide, press play and blah, blah, blah. And you start talking. And she stops and she says to me, Ami, I remember these vehicles on the side of the road from when I was here last in 1952. It was great stories. But the road back to 1948, the road to Jerusalem is blocked. And what are we going to do now? What's going to happen now is David Ben-Gurion is going to go for broke. He's going to take a huge risk, which is going to pay off. And what he's going to do is he's going to say, listen, there's no such thing as a Jewish state without Jerusalem. And what David Ben-Gurion is going to do is he's going to lead an operation that's called Mivtza Nachshon, Operation Nachshon, where he's going to risk and he's going to take 1,500 Palmach fighters. These are some of the finest fighters in this brand new, being put together Jewish army that is soon to be the Israeli Defense Force. It's not quite there yet. And he's going to take 1,500 of the finest fighters, the Palmach fighters from all around the country. He's going to leave a lot of kibbutzim and small towns and everywhere bare without fighters, and he's going to bring them specifically to fight on the road to Jerusalem, to take over, conquer the Arab towns that are on the side of the road in order to open the road to Yerushalayim. The first big battle is going to be the Battle of the Castel, which what we're looking at over here is, here's the Castel. Here's already the top of the number one highway. Okay, we saw before from Shara Guy, we've already climbed to the top, and we're right outside of Jerusalem. Literally today, if there's no traffic between the area of the Castel and Jerusalem, you're in Jerusalem within a couple, at the entrance of the city within a couple of moments. In order to conquer the Castel, though, first of all, I want to take you to there. Come join me, where I'm going to be giving a little explanation from the top of the mountain, from the site itself. The reason that I'm going to be constantly looking down, as you'll see in the video, is because I was trying to make sure not to fall off of the wall that I was standing on. I made it. I was all right.
Hey, welcome to Ami Israel Guide atop the Castel, one of the strategic battles that took place during the Independence War. And from up over here, it is easy to understand why. Take a look. We're over 800 meters, about 2,600 feet above sea level, and we're looking sort of from north to east. The mountainous region with Mevaseret Zion on top to the north of us. Now as we're twisting and turning, we can see Jerusalem. All right, behind my head, meaning east of here, and that's the entrance area of Yerushalayim, but it's running all along the ridge that's behind my head, and soon enough to the south of us, we're going to see the area of Gush Etzion. And as I'm continuing to twist 360, try not to fall, huh? To the west, we can see the mountains beyond which is the Tel Aviv metropolitan area. It's from that direction that the vehicles would make their way up the mountain ridge over here, the mountains over here, on their way to Jerusalem. And now we're going to finish our 360 as we're coming full circle back north behind my head and the area of Mevaseret Zion, which is right outside of Yerushalayim.
Let's get a real feel of being on top of the Castel. In order to do that, let's use Google 360. Here we go. Let's just twist and turn. This over here is what's called the Mukhtar Zone. This is where we stand in order to describe the battles on top of the Castel. And just to get a bit of a view, a twist and turn, we can see, get a bit of a feel of what the area looks like around us over here, the mountains, the hills, as we also saw it a moment ago from the video that I did from literally on top of this structure over here. On April 3rd, 1948, okay, a Palmach force led by their officer's name is Uzi Narkis are going to make their way to the village of the Castel. It's an air village. When they get to over there, they'll discover that the village is empty. They conquer without a battle. Once the Palmach force has captured the Castel over here, they will leave, and they will, 70 soldiers from a different unit called Chel Sadeh, that's led by a man whose name is Mordechai Gazit. He's the officer. They're going to take over the Castel, and that is when the problems are going to start. Because what will happen is, if they're on top over here, from all around, okay, they're going to be Arab fighters that are going to be starting to make their way to the top. This is a view from the top, so you can see the tremendous advantage that anyone who's standing on top has, okay? We do a 360 from on top, this is a bit of a better view as opposed to what I was doing with my selfie 360 experience on top. And we can see that anybody who's coming from below, okay, we need when we come up, we walk up this dirt path over here. It's a nice little hike up, right? Needs to come from a topographical disadvantage, anybody who's coming to the top. And the Arabs are going to start attacking, and they're going to be coming in waves and waves and waves on the first night, the night between April the 3rd and 4th, 1948. But the Chel Sadeh soldiers, led by Mordechai Gazit, are able to hold down on their first night. Especially it helped that when the officer of the Arab fighters, the man whose name is Arikat, is injured, he's taken off the field, so the rest of the Arabs will leave. There will be constant attacks still from the bottom of the hill, okay, to the top of the hill for the next few days. The fateful battle is going to take place on the night between April the 7th and 8th, 1948. By now, the 70 soldiers that are on top of the Castel are tired, they're exhausted, it's cold. Okay, we're over 800 meters above sea level, 2,700 feet above sea level. It's cold. The Jerusalem area is cold. It can be cold, especially at night. In addition to that, it was rainy during those days. They're wet, they're soaked, and they are absolutely exhausted. And during that night, between April 7th and 8th, there's going to be a wave of hundreds of Arabs again attacking the Castel. Descriptions are of Mordechai Gazit walking around and kicking his soldiers who are at the guard post so they stay awake. They were so exhausted. Keep them awake, keep them shooting, and keep them firing. At a certain point in the early hours of April the 8th, there's a lull in the fighting. There's an eerie silence. And at that point, there's two soldiers in a guard post whose names are Yaakov Saman and Meir Carmion, and they hear and sort of see noises coming in their direction. The noise will be of three Arab soldiers that are on their way to them, and they were led by the commander of the whole area of Jerusalem, Abdel Kader El Husseini. Abdel Kader Husseini is the Arab commander of the Arab fighters in the general Jerusalem area. He was making his way up to the Castle with two of his fighters. Now, these three soldiers are making their way up from somewhere down below over here to the top of the mountain over here. What are these two soldiers, Yaakov and Meir, going to do when they hear them coming? They're going to yell out to them, all right, how you doing? Or, identify yourself. What's up? Say something. Now, Abdel Kader el-Husseini was sure that these were British soldiers that had come over to the Arab center on top of the mountain. So he says to them, hello, boys. The two Jewish soldiers that were at their guard post recognize that it's an Arab who's talking to them. They recognize the accent. They shoot in the direction of the three soldiers. Two soldiers are going to escape, and Abdel Kader el-Husseini, this top officer, is going to be killed. Now, these two guards have no idea what they just killed. They see a body goes down, and that's it. They don't want to leave their guard post, all right? They're scared. So they'll wait until first light. At first light, they see they've killed someone. They still don't know who it is, at which point Uzi Narkis, the officer from the Palmach, is going to make his way up the side of the mountain. He's going to come to the corpse. He's going to take out an identity card, but it doesn't say that Abdel Kader el-Husseini. It had a different name. He takes the person's Quran, and he takes his gun, and he's going to send it to Israeli intelligence. It's only at about 10 o'clock that the radios everywhere from all around start exploding because the Arabs realize that their head officer, Abdel Kader el-Husseini, has gone missing, and they're saying the bird has fallen into the cage, meaning he's disappeared. He's fallen into Israeli hands. Where is he? We don't know where he is. And what's going to happen is from all around Jerusalem, Arabs are going to get into buses and taxis and make their way to the bottom of this hill over here. They're going to number about 2,000, and they're going to start running up the top of the hill over here. Now, the fighters on top of this mountain realize that they're simply about to get overrun. The Palmach fighters, all right, that are not that far away, are going to see what's going on, and they're going to rush over to this hill, and they're going to yell to the other Jewish fighters on top of the hill, you guys go, you guys get out of here. The very famous saying of the officer, the Palmach officer, Shimon Al-Fasi, saying the commanders will cover for the privates. The privates, you guys leave. We'll cover for you. And that is what happened. And in the battle over here, in the end, there are going to be 39 Jewish fighters are going to be killed. The hill is going to be overrun by the Arab fighters. They're going to find the corpse of Abdel Kader el-Husseini. They will take him and they will bury him on Har Habayit, on the Temple Mount. Now, most of them are going to leave to go to the funeral. So that night, Palmach forces are going to come to the Castel, easily conquered again. From then on, it will remain in Israeli hands. And the road to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, will be open again. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. And what we can see over here is today when we drive to the Castel, it's a national park. We go up. It's outside of Mevaseret Zion and Ma'oz Zion, right outside of Jerusalem. We see the sign. We get to there. And as we walk up the path that leads to the top, this is what it looks like. We'll get to the top. We can see Shimon Al-Fasi, the officer who said privates retreat, commanders remain behind to cover. And we can also see, where did it go? Oh, no. We can see, there we go, a picture of Abdel Kader el-Husseini. Now, that will lead us. With that, we are going to be finished with the first half of our tour and the first part of the Independence War, which is the Civil War, as I mentioned before. In May of 1948, the British are going to leave at that point on Friday, 4 o'clock, May the 14th. Israel will declare its independence. David Ben-Gurion, our founding father, first prime minister, will declare it on this fateful Friday afternoon in Tel Aviv at what we know today as Independence Hall in Tel Aviv. That night at midnight, the British will leave, and the following day, May the 15th, 1948, Israel is going to be invaded by 5 neighboring armies: the Syrians, the Lebanese, the Iraqis, the Jordanians, and the Egyptians. The important army for our story right now are the Jordanians. And what is the story with them? So what will happen is if we take a look again at a Google Earth map over here, we can again see this map is skewed. If usually we're used to a map, the top of it being north, I sort of flipped Israel from being long to being wide, and the top of the map is east, so like they used to do in ancient times. The bottom of the map is west, the Mediterranean Sea, and we're making our way up from the bottom of the map, okay, from the bottom of the map, from Tel Aviv, which isn't even in our screen. We're making our way up again. We've already been introduced to Sha'ar Hagai. Okay, we made our way up the road. This is more or less where the Castel is, and this over here is the area of Yerushalayim. But now we're going to have another problem, because the Jordanians are going to come in, and where are they going to come up to? They're going to come up to Latrun over here. Latrun is a pkak, all right? A pkak is, the word is escaping me right now. When you block something along the way, I'm having a blackout for the word right now. But anyways, they're going to block the road over here, a plug. Okay, they're going to plug the road in the middle. And with that, again, the road to Jerusalem is going to be blocked. Now, we can see right over here, this is the fortress of Latrun. It was built by the British in the 1940. The Jordanians are going to sit inside, and they are going to command the road. Now, what's going to happen over here is classic Israeli, classic independence war, everything last second, everything crazy, crazy bit of a mess. And that is the creation of a whole new brigade. How long does it take to create a brigade? Usually take months. All right, it could be months, it could be even longer. Shlomo Shamir, who had been an officer, a Jewish officer fighting with the British, which is why he had experience during World War II, is appointed by David Ben-Gurion to create a brigade. It's called Chativa Sheva, the 7th Brigade. How long does he have? A week. Good luck. And he does it. He puts together this brigade, and this brigade's goal is to conquer Latrun and open this pkak to Yerushalayim. And he's going to bring together a mishmash, a combination of officers with experience from the Palmach, of brand new fighters, Holocaust survivors, literally off the ship, who had come from Europe. And they also are going to be, at least they're going to teach them how to use guns and speak to them in several languages. And many of them with zero battle experience are going to be thrown into battle, all together over here in Latrun. The brand new Israeli intelligence are going to say that Latrun will be easily conquered. It is lightly guarded over here by the Jordanians instead of Latrun, and it should not be a problem to conquer it. On the night of May, in the early morning hours of May the 25th, 1948, 20 buses will head out with 400 of these soldiers inside of them. Some of them raw rookies, others experienced fighters, and they're going to make their way. The first battle, the idea wasn't quite to conquer the fortress yet, but the hills all around. And over here we can see one of the battlefields that is in the general Latrun area. By the way, if you want to see exactly where the fortress is located, it's right over here. And now they're going to make their way at about 4 a.m. in buses towards the battle spots. They're sure it's going to be an easy battle. What they do not realize is that the Jordanians are listening to everything, and the Jordanians are ready, and they're just waiting for the first shots to ring out from the Israeli side, and they're going to ambush the Israelis. And that's exactly what happens. And the Israeli fighters will describe the hell that they go through in these open fields. They're completely in the open over here. And just as they're starting to shoot from the Jordanians, all hell is going to break loose. All right. The sky is going to be lit up, and they're going to be shelled, and they're going to be shot at. The Jordanians see exactly where they are. And these Israeli soldiers will describe how with their fingers, they're going to literally try to dig holes into the ground and sort of push themselves inside over there. Some of the fighters of these Holocaust survivors don't know the language that they're being spoken to with. Some of the officers are saying to them, retreat, retreat, retreat. They don't hear, they don't know how to use their guns. And it's an absolute mess. And it's a route from the Jordanian side. Ariel Sharon, okay, Arik Sharon, later to be Israel's prime minister, he is going to be a young officer in the battle over here. And he's going to tell a story how he and another friend of his, an officer named Yaakov Bugin, are stuck over here in all the fighting. And they're going to tell their soldiers, all right, retreat, retreat, retreat. In the meantime, they're going to be shot. Arik Sharon is going to be shot in the stomach. Yaakov Bugin is going to be shot in the mouth. And they're trying to retreat, but they're injured. So they're sort of lying on the ground. And Arik Sharon is going to describe how him and Yaakov Bugin hear from far some of the Arabs trying to rev themselves up to attack them. So what Ariel Sharon and Yaakov Bugin started doing, they start crawling out, but they were in so much pain that they would black out. And when one would black out, the other guy would hit the second person to wake him up and continue crawling out. At a certain point, Arik Sharon said to Yaakov Bugin, listen, I'm done for. I can't. At which point, Yaakov Bugin took out a picture of his own parents, showed it to Arik Sharon, saying, listen, you want to see your parents again? Let's continue to crawl out. Arik Sharon will describe how it was a boiling hot day. Okay, think of one of those heat waves in Israel, which we have so much of. It's exactly that. And as they're making their way, it's already the middle of the day. And Arik Sharon takes out some more, starts drinking. He says to Yaakov Bugin, here, drink some. And Yaakov says, he motions him, I can't, I'm injured in my jaw, I can't open my mouth. It'll be close to 5 p.m. that they managed to crawl out. The fighting had lasted for 13 hours, and it was a horrible loss to the Jewish fighters. But they don't give up, and there's a second attack. We're going to get back to the poem soon enough. There's a second attack that's going to be planned, and this operation is called the Bin Nun operation. Okay, it's named after Yehoshua Bin Nun, Joshua Bin Nun, because Latun is located in the Ayalon Valley. And when we open up the book of Yehoshua, there's a story over there. The story over there of Joshua and Yehoshua fighting against the 5 Canaanite kings, and they're running away to the Ayalon Valley, where it says, Shemesh v'givon dom, v'yareach b'emek Ayalon. The sun and the moon are supposed to stop in the sky, and the moon over the Ayalon Valley will stop so that the Jewish fighters can beat the Canaanite kings and their fighters. And this will take place in the Ayalon Valley. So since the battles are taking place, it was named after Joshua Bin Nun. All right, so Bin Nun operation phase A failed. And now we're jumping a week later to Bin Nun B. There's a second attempt to attack Latun and conquer it, this time also the fortress itself. And just to get a feel of being in the fortress, here's a video that I took from the roof of the museum. Today it's a tanks museum, hence we see all the tanks over here. And this is where the Jordanians were standing, and you look down below and you can see, okay, where all the Israelis are coming from. And the plan is as follows. The plan is specifically on the early morning hours of 4 a.m. of May the 31st, 1948, that 5 armored personnel carriers are going to make their way to Latun and try to break in. Let's go back again to this picture over here. They're going to be holding soldiers that are supposed to attack this fortress over here. Some will have explosives to put on the side of the building to blow gaping holes open so that the soldiers can run in. But the APC vehicle with the main commander, a man whose name is Yaakov Vogel, or Yaki Vogel, is going to arrive over here, break its way in, while the other APCs are outside, and they're going to have flame shooters, and they're going to shoot flames up the side of Latun from inside. Now, what will happen is unfortunately, the APC that comes with explosives is unable to blow up the walls that we see over here on the outskirts of Latun. So the soldiers that are in the other armored personnel carriers are unable to make their way inside. What will happen with the armored personnel carrier that's specifically inside Latun with the flame shooters? To answer that, let's go to the story of Hadassah Lempo. In order to do that, please allow me to take a bit of a drink. Hadassah Lempo was a new immigrant from Europe, and she actually had been a radio person that went in the convoys that made their way to Jerusalem that we spoke about before. And she's going to be in the base, a place called Hulda, where the soldiers went out on these attacks, on these operations. Now, the general in charge of the phase B of the Bin Nun attack, a man whose name is Lasko, says, I do not allow women to take part in the battles against Latun. And Hadassah Lempo, though, she wants to participate. She goes, I'm a radio person. I want to participate. And she goes around to the different vehicles asking who needs a radio person. Everyone says to her, look, the commanders are not allowed to take women on the attack. She gets up to Yaki Vog that we mentioned before. And Yaki says to her, I need a radio person. Wait, let me check and see if I can take you. And the answer from high above is no. But at the end of the day, he was stuck. He didn't have a radio person. So he said to her, listen, get into the vehicle. We're going. And Hadassah Lampa will be in the armored personnel carrier that will break its way inside the Letrun fortress. And she's going to, what will happen is as they were shooting their flame shooters within Letrun, the flames start burning and scaring away the Jordanian soldiers, but the flames will blow out at the end of the day. And at that point, the Jordanians are going to start throwing hand grenades on the vehicle that she's inside. Yaki Vog is going to jump out of the vehicle and he's going to be killed. And Hadassah Lempo, at a certain point, is going to send a radio transmission to everybody when it was pretty much over. And her final words are, these are our final moments. Everyone here has been killed or hurt. Tell everyone I say hello. And unfortunately, Hadassah Lempo was killed in Operation Binun B. The attack on Latun does not succeed. In memory of Hadassah Lempo, there is a Hadassah Lempo street on Mount Scopus that will remind her of her activities. If we go back for a minute to the poem that was written by Nathan Alterman, it's going to describe some of the fighters, and especially the fighters, the Holocaust survivors that were fresh off the ship, thrown into battle, and did not survive over here outside of Latun. He's going to write the poem called Before Daybreak. And it goes like this. In a new thorn script from foreign darkness, they heard a yelled command, Goyim's language like Hebrew. These people didn't know Hebrew. For them, it was like, it was a foreign language, Hebrew. And in it, unbeknown to them, the verdict, to fall in God's mountains and Ayalon, the Ayalon Valley that we just mentioned. And before the morrow's morning, before the rise of dawn, they were thrown into the desperate war, falling blind in the darkness of a new people in a new land. Of the 120 fighters, soldiers who were killed in these two phases of operations in Binun operation, of the 120, 15 of them were Holocaust survivors that were fresh off the ship. So what do we do with Jerusalem? Jerusalem is still under siege. And what's life like in Jerusalem at that time? So there's very little food and there's very little water. In order to conserve water and be able to take full advantage of the little water that there was at that point, each resident of Jerusalem at that point was allocated 10 liters. That's about 2.5 gallons of water a day. That's about it. How much water do you use to just flush the toilet or take a shower? I mean, just when you let your sink run a little bit when you're washing your dishes. So how do you manage with 10 liters or 2.5 gallons of water a day? So this was in the newspaper back then, describing what you do. So you have 10 liters, okay? You're going to use 2 liters a day, half a gallon for drinking. You're going to put some of it for cooking, and you're going to reuse a lot of this water. For example, you're going to wash your dishes, and then what you'll do is you'll use it for, different kinds of soaps, and then pour it into a bucket that you wash your floor with, and that water you're going to put into the toilet. Same thing, whatever you put over here, the water that you're going to use over here also for laundry, you can use it for the toilet or washing your floor. You get the idea. These are instructions of how to conserve and reuse the water that you're using. In the book "Oh Jerusalem," Zipporah Borowski is going to describe her experience regarding food in Jerusalem when there was so little food, and she was a student. She would describe there was, people would take turns of who would go out with the threat of sniper fire on you to get the allocated food, small amount of it that you could get a day. And this morning was Zipporah's turn, and she describes how it was her turn to pick up the one egg each that was allotted to her and her fellow students. She was running. She picks it up. She was running back because she was scared of being shot at from from whoever. And she fell in her precious bundle. Eggs will break. She promptly scraped up the broken eggs and converted them into muddy omelet. They were hungry. They were not going to give up on their eggs. There was a rainstorm in that late time of year for rain in Israel around May. And this rainstorm helped the chubeza, the mallow weed, grow. Now you can make food out of the chubeza. You can use it for food out of the mallow weed. And this helped the somewhat starving residents of Jerusalem at that time make their way through into the road is going to be later open. My father-in-law was 84 years old. He was an 11-year-old kid in Jerusalem at the time. And he describes it. He remembers, he describes how he would run in the roads quickly from one point to another in order not to be shot. He described seeing people who were shot at the time from the enemy, by the enemy. He'll describe the chubeza, the malaweed, the hunger that was going on at the time. So hearing the fellow describe it really brings it home, and it's very fresh in his memory, somewhat traumatic for an 11-year-old kid. How are we going to open the road to Jerusalem? So the Burma Road is going to be the answer. What happens is there's besides the number one highway, there's really no road leading from Jerusalem out and in this area over here that they're trying to open, and there are old dirt paths that are almost impassable to drive through. Why am I saying almost? Because there's stories of a couple of people that do manage to make their way through. Aryeh Topper is a Palmach fighter in early May who's going to make his way out of Jerusalem on a Jeep all the way to Tel Aviv. He's going to do it through an almost impassable dirt path, but he does it with one small Jeep. At the end of May, there's going to be another Palmach officer named Gavriel Rappaport, who on the 29th of May is going to drive from Jerusalem to Hulda, which is not far from Latun, and he's going to walk into the army base where Moshe Shamir and the commanders of the 7th Brigade are, and he's going to say, listen, I just drove to here from Jerusalem. I want to show you the road that I drove on. True, I'm a bit of a crazy driver, and I was driving a Jeep. What you need is a road for big trucks to make their way to Jerusalem, but we can make the road work. And Shlomo Shamir is going to take his officer, his name is Yitzchak Mo, to see the road that has just been passed. And Yitzchak Mo is going to look at the road. He's going to look at the topography, and he's going to look at the areas where there is absolutely no road, impossible topography, and he's going to say it is impossible to create this road. What do you think Shlomo Shamir is going to say to him? Do it. And that's exactly what they do. What they're going to do at this point is this road, which first of all, let's take a look at the final result. The road is like this. We can see this red path over here. The main highway leading to Jerusalem, the number one highway that we keep talking about, is over here. That's what I'm pointing at over here. Now, our problem is this is Latun. It's this plug, right? This pkak, it's blocking the way to Jerusalem. So this impossible dirt path, this red line is going to be created that's going to bypass Latun. It's a 12-kilometer, 7-mile route, and I drew it over here with the help of Google Earth. Here's Latun, and the path is going to zig and zag a little bit, bypassing it and then connecting to Shar Hagai over here, and the number one highway, which is already open. Who are going to be the people? Before we talk about how exactly it's created, I want to invite you to join me on the most difficult part of the road, the serpentine path area of the road. And after I explain a bit over there, we'll continue from there.
Welcome to Ami Israel Guide. I'm now standing on the Burma Road. This is an emergency bypass road that was created during the Independence War in 1948 to bypass the Jordanians who were blocking the road to Jerusalem. And I can just feel the urgency that the people who were working over here at the time were feeling as they were working as hard as they could and as quickly as they could to open this road to Jerusalem so that the city isn't under siege, bringing water, food, and ammunition to Jerusalem.
So just like with the convoy vehicles that are virtually behind my head right now, COVID gives you interesting opportunities when you're sitting at home and not working and looking for ways to create virtual tours. It gives me time. And for the first time, I've been there once before years ago, but for the first time, I actually figured out how to drive to there and get to the spot. And this sort of pretend vehicle that's next to me right now is one of the many different sort of like statues that JNF, Kakal, the Jewish National Fund, put over there in order to remember this path. And no one goes to there anymore. It's off the beaten track, but it is a really, really cool place to go to. You don't drive on this part. You just park a little bit further out where your vehicle can get to today, and then you do a short walk to this, the difficult part of the topography. Really, really cool. So how is the work done? Soldiers from the 7th Brigade, along with volunteers from all over the place, are going to come, and they're going to start working on either widening or strengthening the old dirt path that exists or creating something out of nothing. Some of this time, they're going to be working literally with their bare hands, moving rocks from one place to the other. They're going to bring bulldozers and compressors to build this path over here. The work is going to start on May the 30th, and it'll last for May the 31st, and it'll last for 11 days until June the 10th. The most difficult part which is several hundred meters long, the serpentine path, which is where I was standing before, and that's where these pictures are over here are from, is a very deep descent that they need to go down before going back up again to Jerusalem. Well, the work is being done over here. Jerusalem is still under siege. And in this path, this part over here, Jeeps couldn't really so much make their way through. So packs weighing between 90 to 130 pounds, or in kilos, 40 to 60 people are going to be put on people's backs, and they're going to drag them for several hundred meters from one end to the other, where they're going to put on Jeeps and brought to Jerusalem to try and keep a lifeline going to Yerushalayim. They brought camels to try and bring these things to Jerusalem, but the camels wouldn't budge. They brought cows to try to put things on their backs, but the cows just went out and started eating, the grass in the area. It worked with mules. They brought 21 mules, chamorim, put them, on those mules' backs, and the mules did the job, and they made their way up to Jerusalem. There was always the fear that the Jordanians would attack, which is why all of the work was done at night and not during the day. The first week, the Jordanians did not attack. They didn't realize what was going on. But by June the 6th, the Jordanians do realize what's going on. They come and they attack the road, and the Israelis managed to hold them off. But there were 19 people who were killed on the road over here during this time as a result of the Jordanians firing in the direction of the road. During the day, when work wasn't done because it's too late and there was the fear of the Jordanians shooting at them, people would go to sleep out in the open, but they would disperse. All the vehicles were dispersed because of the shooting that was going on from the Jordanian side. There's a Shabbat in the middle of all this work going on over here, and there are a lot of yeshiva students that were volunteering to work to open this road. But what do you do on Shabbat? One of the yeshiva students, a man whose name is Natan Abramson, will rush up on Friday afternoon to Jerusalem, and he's going to come stand in line outside of the home of Rabbi Herzog, the chief rabbi of Israel at the time, to ask him, what do we do? The shamash, the Rabbi Herzog's helper at the door, realizes who this person is, why he's come. He whisks him through the line, straight to Rabbi Herzog. He tells Rabbi Herzog what's going on. Rabbi Herzog says to him, it's a mitzvah. It's a commandment to continue working on Shabbat because you're saving lives. And the work, of course, will continue. On June the 10th, 1967, the first vehicle will manage to make its way through to Jerusalem. And the following day, June 11, 6 a.m., vehicles will make their way along the road up to Yerushalayim, and the siege to Yerushalayim is going to be over. The way to Jerusalem is open. There is a newspaper man by the name of Kenneth Bilby who sees these people working on the road. He is so impressed with their motivation and the hard work that they're doing. He's going to coin this road the Burma Road. Before that, it's going to be called Derech Sheva, the 7th road, named after the 7th Brigade that's working on it. But he's going to coin the phrase the Burma Road for this road over here. And if we started back in January, this end of November, but really January of 1948, when the Arab irregulars and some of the locals are going to start blocking the road to Jerusalem with Sharagai, and then the road will be open from the Castel in April of 1948. Later on, after the Declaration of Independence, blocked again in Latun, and then this bypass road, the Burma Road, bypassing Latun and opening the road to Jerusalem, not to be blocked again, that's all, in June of 1948. We can see pictures that I took when I was in the Burma Road last summer. What we can see is some of the metal mesh over here that was put on the road to help the vehicles drive in it. Take a look at the picture in the top right corner. I went low down to take a picture of it so you see the bedrock out of which this road was created and how difficult it is for vehicles to drive in it, which is why this metal mesh that we can see in the left picture was put on the road. We also see over here in the top bottom right corner is a pipeline, because what the Jordanians will do is they are going to stop the water that was making its way up to Yerushalayim. All right, Jerusalem has no water, and they were getting water from their water cisterns. And Chevrat Mekorot, Israel's water company, is going to do an emergency project, and they're going to create a pipeline that also goes up the Burma Road, and it will bring water to Yerushalayim when the road to Jerusalem was opened. And how can we not go through this without turning to Natan Alterman, our so famous poet, who's going to write the song, the poem, the Trailblazers' words, Portzei Haderech, and he's going to commemorate those who fought to open the road. And the poem goes like this. Logic ruled. In vain. Fear had said, we are doomed. The old accounting of wars spat disdainfully in our faces. British steel and Arab fighter yelled, "On your knees." All right, saying the Arabs, also the British, they were fighting us. We were not doing well, and we had just a score of rifles. Velanu minyan rovim, but we broke through the road. To you, the people, upstanding and alive. That's us. They were betrothed with no praise nor crowns. All right, those who are fighting. To you, the people, that's us. They have gifted these 40 kilometers, these 40 parsecs, the open road to Jerusalem, drenched in blood and toil, gray and rocky. But as of now, the road is open. So toda rabah. Thank you very much. We'll open up to questions. If you have any questions that you want to send to me, comments, or remarks that for whatever reason we're not going to talk about now in our discussion, here's my email. You're more than welcome to email me. I will stop share.
Well, thank you very much. It's a relief to reach Jerusalem safely. Let's see. Carol wants to know, why is the word Burma? What is the significance of the word Burma?
That's what I mentioned before.
Oh, sorry, miss. Okay.
No, basically what happens is it wasn't originally called the Burma Road. It was called Derech Hativa Sheva, the 7th Brigade Road, named after the soldiers who worked on it. And Kenneth Bilby, this newspaperman, American journalist who comes to here, he sees the work that's going on and it reminds him of the Burma Road from World War II. It was in the Far East, so he sort of coins the road that was created here in 1948, the same thing, and it stuck. That's it.
Okay. Boy, can you please put up Ami's email again? Someone requested it. And Julie wants to know about Mickey Marcus's role in the building of the Burma Road.
Mickey Marcus, David Stone. I'll say it in a minute, but first I'll say watch the movie Cast a Giant Shadow with Kirk Douglas, Zichrono livracha, may his memory be blessed, who played David Marcus, Mickey Stone. True story, he was an American Jewish officer who had been in the American Army in World War II. And the Israelis, when the independence was breaking out, were looking for someone with experience. Don't think of the Israeli army today with all of, what it's about today. Back then, they had no experience, and they went look for American Jews with military experience. And David Marcus comes, and David Marcus is going to play various roles during the Independence War. But one of the roles that he's going to play is helping with the planning of the attacks on Latun. He's going to sit in back with different officers, with Laskov and Shlomo Shamir, and see the horrible loss that took place over there. But he was helping with. I'm not going to get into everything he did during the war because he did a lot of different things. But one of the things is he helped with the planning of the attacks on Latun, and which, of course, connects to the whole story of the Burma Road. He was unfortunately killed right afterwards. When the road was opened on June 10th, 11th, it was open exactly then because a ceasefire goes into place on June the 11th for a month, and then the battles continued. And he was unfortunate during the ceasefire. He was killed by friendly fire, which was a very tragic ending. But that's a little bit about David Marcus.
Harold wants to know how long it takes today to walk the Burma Road as a hike.
12 Ks, 7 miles.
You can also do just parts of it, if I'm not mistaken.
You could do parts of it. I'll tell you, there's a couple classic parts where I went to, but nothing. You drive very close to, and then you walk for 5-10 minutes, and you're there. There's another area outside of what's called Beit Meir. It's called Reches Shayarot. Shoot me an email if you really want to go and I'll tell you where it is. And it's an hour or so hike. It's an easy hike. To do the whole thing, do the math. 7 miles, 12 Ks. I've never done the whole thing. But yeah, a few hours.
Okay. Daria wants to know if it's true that the residents of Abu Ghosh helped to build the Burma Road, or how was the operation kept secret from the surroundings?
I've read a bit about Abu Ghosh. I have not heard of them helping with the Burma Road, but I definitely always am happy to learn new things. If they did, I'd be happy to know about it, but I have not read that about them. From the residents of look, how was it kept secret? At the end of the day, they kept it secret the first week because they tried to work as quietly as possible at night. But like I mentioned before, if the work started on May the 30th, by June 6th, the secret was out and the Jordanian stuff was going on. They were attacking the workers on the road. So you try quietly if you can, only working at night, not in the day. They'll hold out for several days until the secret was out. but Abu Ghosh is a little bit less connected, because if I'd go back to the map, the main part of it got to Sharagai. True, another part continued up to Beit Meir, but Abu Ghosh is a bit further north and east of those areas over there.
There's a great description of building of the Burma Road in Exodus in the book. Yeah.
It's been years. It's one of my favorites as a kid. I'm sure there is. It's been too long.
There is, yes. Miriam wants to know if the route of the Burma Road comes from the Tanakh.
That if the route itself, what's the question? Is it a biblical route? Is
Yeah.
that the question? Not that I know of. Nope. I've not read that anywhere. It's an older path that was paved out maybe during earlier times. I would not go earlier than several hundred years. We do not know of a biblical connection to that route.
Okay, I think we'll end with a request from Peter, who wants to know if you can recommend some books that tell us about the 1948 war.
With pleasure, two of them. One of them is this one over here. That here we go. Oh, Jerusalem by Dominique Lapierre and Larry Wilkins. Excellent. It gives a great background, but it will emphasize the Jerusalem, the city itself, and the surrounding area. Amazing book. If you want a book, and it's also a good read. If you want a different book that gives all around Israel, it's called Genesis. I forget who wrote it. It's a bit of a more difficult read just because it's O Jerusalem flows more. But those two books, O Jerusalem and Genesis, are two excellent books on the Independence War.
Well, Anne is adding in the chat here that there's an excellent account of Shlomo Shamir that he writes about the Burma Road. So I think we have a lot of information for everyone. Next week, we're moving forward to the 6-Day War, aren't we? 1967?
Absolutely, that's the plan. We're going to talk about the 6-Day War, the battles, and a lot of poetry, and we're going to focus it around Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem of Gold, and much more.
Okay, so looking forward to that. We hope you all join us next week to continue celebrating Jerusalem. And good evening to everyone. Thank you very much, Ami.
Thank you. Good evening.